At the beginning of 2019, I took a course in scriptwriting. One of the things I learned that stood out for me is a principle that belongs to Robert McKee called the negation of the negation. It is a principle by which you design the villain or the antagonists. If the hero pursues a value, say love, then the villain can embody the contrary, indifference, the contradiction, hate, or the negation of the negation, which would be masking hate as love. Basically, you pass the contradiction of the value as the value itself, making it a double negative. Here is a quote by Robert McKee on the negation of the negation. You take what is negative, like hate, then you do one of two things. Either you disguise it with a lie, so it becomes hatred masquerading as love, like in the great films such as Ordinary People, or you take what is normally directed at the world and turn it inward on the character, so hatred becomes self-hate. Those are the two techniques that take what is common, everyday antagonism and conflict, and push it one step further to the limit of things. End quote. Let's consider another example, this time on the value of justice. The contrary to it would be its partial opposite, which would be unfairness. The contradiction to it would be the full opposite of the value, which would be injustice. And the negation of the negation would be injustice masquerading as justice, which would be tyranny. I think the reason this is such a powerful technique for building antagonists is that it is a good illustration of how bad things can be justified in the name of good intentions, which is the topic of this video. In part 1, we saw how ideals appeal to our wounds and how they make us want to fix others or fix the world. The problem is that action is taken based on perspective, and perspective can be skewed. Albert Camus said the following in his novel The Plague. The evil that is in the world always comes of ignorance, and good intentions may do as much harm as malevolence if they lack understanding. On the whole, men are more good than bad. That, however, isn't the real point. But they are more or less ignorant, and it is this that we call vice or virtue. The most incorrigible vice being that of an ignorance that fancies it knows everything and therefore claims for itself the right to kill. The soul of the murderer is blind, and there can be no true goodness nor true love without the utmost clear-sightedness. Therefore, what Albert Camus is trying to say is that good intentions are not enough in order to do good if true understanding is lacking. Just like how Jiddu Krishnamurti and Alan Watts often said that you cannot solve a problem by fighting against it, or like Einstein said that a problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness or understanding where the problem was created. In the media, we are often encouraged to become emotionally invested in the stories we are presented with, and we are persuaded by the idea of doing good in the world or righting wrongs. That is because people have the need to know that the things they guide themselves after, their values, can bring positive change into the world. Politicians speak in abstract terms because they know that the mind understands the subjective reality of those words. Good means something for X and something else for Y. So when politicians say that we must fight for a good future or use other phrases like these, they do not really transmit anything concrete. They just allow you to fill the gap with what that good thing is for you. Just think of the rhetoric that you see in the media prior to a war. Lastly, I would like to end with a quote by Eva Pierrakos. The question is often asked why destructiveness, illness, war, and cruelty exist. The answers that have been given are often not sufficiently understood, but even when they are somewhat understood, something is missing. I have often said that misconceptions create strife, and this is perfectly true, but there exists an additional element without which no misconception, regardless of how off the mark, could have power. It is this. Mere negativity, as in a destructive attitude, has a much less destructive effect than destructiveness attached to and combined with the positive life principle. This is what makes negative manifestations on this earth plane particularly serious or severe. In other words, when a positive force mingles with a negativity or a destructive attitude, this combination creates evil. Real destructiveness is, therefore, not only a distortion of truth and of the constructive universal powers, but a destruction that must be permeated with the powerful life principle and its constructive power. If the positive life principle were not involved and inadvertently used, then evil or destructiveness would be of very short duration.